Bill, can you hear me all right? Is that a Mr. Kerner? Check, check, Mr. Kerner.
Hey,
Hey, Bill, how are you?
I getting along.
Great. We can hear you
I
fine.
got a load back.
We'll get going in just a few minutes. We can hear you fine, though.
Okay, good.
Good afternoon, everyone. We will get started here. This is the July 23rd, 2025 Manitou Springs Mobility and Parking Board. Welcome, everyone. We'll do a quick little roll call here. I am the chair, Corey Sutella, and over here, I think I see our vice chair.
Carl Stang, present.
And do we have Pam Smith?
Present.
And do we have a Mr. Bill Kerner?
Yes.
Great to see you, Bill. So with that, we've got our quorum and we'll move ahead. I think we did hear from Rolf, Joy, and Luke that they can't make it today. So off we go. We've got an agenda in front of us, and I would like for a motion and a second to approve our agenda or any comments on the agenda.
So move.
Second.
That was Bill and Carl. Any opposed to the agenda? Passes unanimously. And now we will look at the minutes. I did have a chance to take a look at the minutes. Thank you very much, James, for good minutes and getting them out real quick. So appreciate your work on that. I didn't notice anything on there. So unless anyone else has comments on the minutes, I would ask for a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the June 2025 meeting.
Corey, I'd move that we approve the minutes.
Thank you, Carl.
I second.
All in favor of approving the minutes, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. It passes unanimously. Thank you. On to public comment on non-agenda items. This is the time of the meeting when we welcome anyone in the audience who would like to make a comment related to the scope of the Mobility and Parking Board. To do so, you've got up to 3 minutes to make a comment. Is there anyone who'd like to do that? Not at this time? Okay, we're on our way to setting a record. Thanks for that. And you just faked me out, James, but it's okay. I got it here. So next up, we've got special guest tonight. Our Parks Director, Jillian Rossi, is here to give us a little bit of an update. This was on request of a discussion we had last time, an update about the Bill Bowers Park. So
Bill Bowers Open Space.
Bill Bowers Open Space, which touches Bill Bowers Park.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Jillian Rossi. I'm the Parks and Recreation Director. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to attend part of your meeting tonight and share an update on Bill Bowers Open Space, or Bowers Open Space, which is directly connected to Bill Bowers Park. So on June 10th, I attended a City Council work session to share an update on the public survey we intended to put out to assess the community's feedback on how they feel about the proposed trail going through Bill Bowers Open Space, connecting Bill Bowers Park to the base of Crystal Hills Boulevard. So the feedback I got from that meeting, and we did have a draft survey prepared that I'd previously brought to OSAC, the Open Space Advisory Committee. City Council's recommendation was to hold off on implementing the survey from the city side. They'd like to see this survey implemented from a third party or a professional survey, if you will. So right now I'm in the process of figuring out how much a professional survey to assess community interest and concerns over the trail will cost. My next step is to bring that proposal to OSAC and ask if they would like to fund that survey. I don't have it in my parks budget this year, so I would need to request that funding from the Open Space Advisory Committee. And from there, we would implement the public engagement survey. And that would involve not just a survey, but we'd like to do one public meeting as well. That was something that council alluded to that they thought would be helpful. And this survey, it'd be pretty robust. I would include how much the project could cost. I'm also gathering trail development quotes from local trail builders and a robust environmental impact study quote for the property. So we know what may or may not be disrupted with the creation of the proposed trail. And I say proposed trail because this trail is mentioned in several areas in our post plan, which was redone and reapproved in 2016. And I'm sure you guys, most of you are familiar with the Parks Open Space and Trails Plan from 2016. It's available on our website. Also, if you're not familiar with it, just make sure I'm covering everything on my list here. What questions do you have?
Go ahead, Carl.
So I'll throw one out there to get started. So just out of curiosity, how common is it for the city to acquire or have open space that goes like totally undeveloped? Do we have like an inventory of all the open spaces and how many, like Deer Creek, the up in Crystal Hills, it's the Deer Creek Nature Area or whatever, it is largely undeveloped, no trail, formal trail, though people do hike through there. So how prevalent is that in the city inventory? Do you have any?
I have a ballpark. So the city has dozens of open space parcels. Most of them are undeveloped. Of course, our two shining stars right now are Red Mountain Open Space and Iron Mountain Open Space, which do have the Inman Trail going through them. We also finally acquired a connecting parcel at Black Canyon Open Space, and we just got the master plan approved for that. There are dozens, I don't want to say dozens, there are many small parcels of open space throughout the city that aren't developed right now. An example would be 121 Pawnee Avenue, which is that beautiful yarrow meadow across from Manitou Springs Elementary School. I believe a house was there back in the day and burned down, and the property became open space. So that's an example of a smaller parcel that's not a developed open space at this point, but the larger parcels, as far as I know, they do have either trails going through them currently, or they have master plans like Black Canyon Open Space.
And those smaller open spaces, are they similar acreage to the Bill Bauer open space or much smaller?
I would say most of them are much smaller. Yeah.
Thank you.
Jillian, you mentioned there was a request from council to get a robust environmental impact statement quote. Is that, I'm not familiar with that in terms of Manitou's operations. So is that something that we've done before in Manitou? Does it mean the same thing as it means with Forest Service?
No, this would not be something like the NEPA process. So I think that's what you're
Yeah,
alluding to,
yeah.
right? Okay, so this wouldn't be NEPA. An environmental impact study is a study that you typically pay professional consultants to come out and do. They typically have biologists and other ecologists on their staff who will walk the property. And that could include things like a migratory bird survey, a plant survey, figuring out what invasive species we have on the property. It could include as much as you want. I haven't been involved with an EIS in Manitou Springs yet. I know that we did them for our open space parcels in City of Colorado Springs. And we were lucky enough to have a wildlife biologist on staff who could do those surveys for us. So once the consultant does the survey, they send the survey results to the city, who would share them with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, just to get another perspective on it and make sure that we're covering all of our bases. And so that's my information on the EIS, the Environmental Impact Study or Assessment.
Okay. Other questions for Jillian?
There's got to be more.
Jillian, you might be aware that we spoke about this last meeting, and we're, as a board, we've got later on our agenda. I don't think you'll be able to stay until our action items, but we are considering taking a position on the Bill Bowers Park. So if there are any other questions that you've got, now would be the time to ask them. Actually, I will ask, can you remind me, do you know the actual acreage of the acreage and dimensions of the open space?
I know the acreage. I don't know the dimensions off the top of my head, but the acreage sits just under 8 acres.
Okay.
Yeah, I just did that math this morning. I think it's 7.88, if I remember correctly. It's those two parcels combined because we finally acquired the second parcel in 2023.
Okay.
And I do want to mention, OSAC is hosting a strategic planning meeting at the same time as this meeting, and they'll also be discussing where the proposed trail development for Bill Bowers Open Space falls on their priority list. So that'll be more information we have after they conclude their meeting this evening also.
Okay, well, we'll wait to see how our vote goes, but it may be good information to take to them that, from a mobility perspective, we're interested in that. Obviously, as you mentioned, it's in the post plan as part of the Ring of Manitou concept, I think. Does that make sense?
I know it's in the post plan. It's on several of the maps they have. I don't remember, and I just skimmed it this morning to refresh my memory. I don't remember specifically if it was mentioned as part of the Ring Manitou system. That would make sense, but I just don't remember if it's part of that system.
Okay. Well, yeah, so there's obviously interest from OSAC, and that was the group that recommended to use the open space fund for the purchase of the two properties. Both properties were purchased with the OS fund, is that right?
I know for sure the most recent one was, I
Yeah.
think the former property was purchased pre-2016, and I'm not too familiar with
Okay.
then.
And one other question, in the concept of this park, I know there's a pinch point that would make, in my understanding, it would make a trail to connect through the property challenging, but possibly not impossible, but it would be ideal if we could, if the city of Manitou could acquire a bit more space that would allow an easier trail. Does that meet with your understanding?
Yeah, and if, I'm sure you guys have seen the map of the two parcels, there is a significant pinch point on the, oh man, I'm directionally challenged. What is that? The east side of the south side of the property? The newest parcel has a pinch point. And it will make, what was it?
Isn't it it's the connection between the two properties, right? That's like two triangles coming together is my end.
There's another one.
Oh,
So
there's
there's that pinch point, which is actually decent. That's a larger pinch point. And then the smaller one is just up the open space from that one. We could navigate it. We've walked this parcel with the Rocky Mountain Field Institute before. It's tight. It'd be helpful to have more space. But I think we would be able to build something through there. It's just small.
And we wouldn't necessarily have to acquire property. We could probably get an easement. Isn't that another option from the
Yeah.
adjoining property owners? Some
Yeah,
sort of
from-
right of use.
Acquiring an easement would help out with that.
Yeah, we wouldn't have to purchase it, but getting an easement from that property owner would make the trail building a lot easier. And I actually had a chance to walk it with some OSAC members also. And that was our assessment. Go ahead, Carl.
So I guess a couple more questions and not to rehash the city council work session, but just trying to think back to some of the discussion items from that meeting. And just to clarify, so one of the topics brought up, right, is the budget concern, the general fund and the marijuana tax. But my understanding is the trail construction, if it does proceed, would come out of the OSAC budget. Is that a proper statement?
If they vote to fund the trail construction using their annual budget. So it would depend on where, I assume OSAC would fund it. They fund the majority of our trail maintenance and construction right now, but it would need to be part of their 2025, 2026, 7 plan. So yes, that would come from OSAC, which is not the general fund.
Right, okay. And then there was,
Before you move on, if I could just clarify.
Yeah, please.
There are many, many sources of funds for trail construction, notably the non-motorized trail grant program from GOCO and the state of Colorado. And it's potential, there's a possibility that if this truly is a mobility enhancement, there could also be some transportation dollars that could possibly be leveraged for that. So for sure, OSAC would be the first place that normally we'd look for constructing a trail like this, but because of the connection that's possible, there may be some other sources. Is that fair to say, Jillian?
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you.
and then moving on, there was discussion about concerns of wildfire mitigation, houselessness, all that kind of thing. And, so my take is that whether there's a trail there or not, people are going to hike through there. And whether there's a trail through there or not, wildfire is still a concern. And so the trail is somewhat secondary. And maybe it makes it access easier to go in and do, trail mitigation, clean up trash or whatever. But no matter what, houseless, if they find that as an ideal location for camping, a trail actually might keep them from camping there because of the visibility. And it's all speculation, but the main point, it feels like a lot of that is secondary to whether the trail there is not.
What is are you asking a
No,
question?
that's just,
Okay.
yeah. That's just, I guess, stating my opinion. on
Yeah.
that, Right, because those topics came up during that council meeting.
Right.
So
That leads me to a question. Are there currently plans, or could you imagine there becoming plans for wildfire mitigation on that property?
There are not currently plans, but there will be in the future. So the Community Wildfire Protection Plan that just came out, our fire department did identify Black Canyon Open Space as our landmark launching point for wildfire mitigation on open spaces. So we do plan to start there and then provide mitigation on all of our open spaces that need it. And we would do it in order of priority. So I would definitely expect wildfire mitigation in Bill Bowers open space. I just don't know the timeline.
Thank you. And is there, or would you anticipate there being any conservation easements on the property?
I guess that depends. I know they're desired, especially if we want to increase the size of that pinch point and increase the area we have available for the proposed trail. But I don't have any additional information on that right now.
Okay, but to your knowledge, it's not currently encumbered by a conservation easement that like held by Palmer or something like that,
No, not
like
Bill
in the
Bowers.
way that Black Canyon is.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, great information. Any other questions for Ms. Rozzi?
Question.
Go ahead, Bill.
Is a map available? Just out of my curiosity. Now, I'm familiar with that area, but I haven't seen the map that shows the trail.
I don't have one on me right now, but we can probably get you one, Bill.
Well,
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be just me, but I think that it'd be nice for the committee to take a look at it.
So I included a few maps in the city council work session presentation that I gave on June 10th. So it's available on Documents on Demand. I could also just email it to Maps.
If you wouldn't mind, if
The-
you could get it over to James, he'll make sure it gets to all of us.
Okay, I'll send it to you, James.
Thank you.
I would just
Thank you.
also, Bill, if you are so inclined, you can go on the county assessor website and you can view those parcels in their parcel viewer. It just isn't
Okay.
another alternative.
Bill, you said you've got a general understanding. It basically, connects at the top on the south side to Bill Bowers Park and runs down more or less, you could
Right.
say parallel-ish to Crystal Hills Boulevard to the overpass of Crystal Hills, where Highway 24 goes over Crystal Hills Boulevard.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Great.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds good.
And I just, one more thing. So I'm super stoked that the city bought those properties because previously at the base, they were like, it was a construction company dumping all kinds of junk there. So, I mean, I think it's
Yeah.
great, fantastic. This acquired that property. So thank you for that.
I wish I could take all the credit. You're welcome. I'll share your sentiments with OSAC.
Great. Well, with that, we'll say thank you very much for joining us and providing all that information. And if we have any other questions, we'll reach out. But for now, that's been really helpful.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Nice to be at your meeting.
Thanks. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we've got our city council liaison report, and we have our city council liaison, Natalie Johnson, here. Welcome, Ms. Johnson.
All right, Natalie Johnson, City Council Liaison. I actually do not have much to share. Last night, we were given sort of an update on the speed traffic camera situation, and we just determined as a council, the numbers came back really high, and it looks like we would have to give out somewhere in the neighborhood of 700 speeding tickets a month to break even. And since our goal was to actually change behavior and not just give out tickets. We're going to kind of continue to track it, see if technology changes, if things become more affordable. But at the moment, we're sort of tabling that project. But with that, we know that traffic calming is still needed in a number of areas in the community. So we're going to continue, I think, to kind of look at how we can work with staff to come up with some solutions moving forward. But that's the only real update I have. I feel like, John's been doing such a great job. We just need to get out of the way and let him do his thing. So it's been nice. So I don't know if you have any questions for me, any specific questions.
Any questions for Councilmember Johnson?
So you kind of already answered it, but I'll ask anyways.
Mhm.
So can you maybe elaborate a little bit more? And I haven't
Mhm.
watched last night's council meeting,
Mhm.
so I apologize in advance. What the discussion was as far as alternatives to the traffic cameras? Was there any engagement into that last night or no?
Since, again, that's something that you're probably going to be working with, the parking and mobility director on, as opposed to the police department. We didn't have the right folks in the room for the conversation. But like I said, and I think just due to where we are as a council, working on preparing the budget for next year and things like that, that we all said this is important. And we're going to look at how we can work with staff on mitigating some of this next year and looking at next year's budget. And of course, all that's subject to change as we move forward. But the overall, I would say, message of the council was that this wasn't the right time, but also that we recognize the need.
Right, yeah, because
Yeah,
I mean,
That was clear.
every day I'm hearing
Mhm.
from neighbors all over town about,
Mhm.
issues and
Mhm.
it's the screaming for attention. So,
Yeah, so that's coming through. And so we appreciate that. And so we don't want to feel like we're not losing that need. Mhm.
Any other questions for Natalie? Nope. All
Awesome.
right.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving along, we'll get into our presentation. So we'll dive into our goal review. The outstanding goals we've got, I think, are, let's see, well, it's the RPP and the bike/ped master plan. And here comes. Oh, there's a list of our goals. So yeah, goal 1 is to develop the scope for the micromobility, not just bikeability master plan, to focus on safe bike ped and rural infrastructure, including thorough public engagement. And Mr. Crawford, I think you've got a little update on timing for that.
So I have met with.
Microphone.
Apologies. I have met with one of the consultants that I use a lot with Kimley Horn that has done work in this area, and he's got some preliminary ideas from us, what y'all sent me from the board, and just from the point of view of helping me with a scope of work for us then to bring back here, go over and develop that scope of work. And then at that point, as you said, we'll go out, in a RFP type situation for a consultant on that. So that has started. I'm just waiting to hear back from him on some of the initial findings that he has. And he's also looking at some of the cities that were recommended and seeing what they're doing and all too. So I have started that process to develop a scope.
That's great. And can you give us any kind of a guess of the timeline of when we might be looking to get that RFP? Not trying to push the timeline, just wondering what your expectation is, given your immense workload and getting up to speed with everything. So,
Well, my hope is definitely to do it in the fourth quarter. So
okay,
my plan is this year.
okay. Okay, goal number 2, we talked about that. We did do some work with the bike and walk to school and work. So I think we've conceptually achieved that goal. And likewise, goal number 3, we have been in contact with Mountain Metro and we feel like we've got a good cadence there. So that's going well. And then the next one would be the RPP. And I think this is another one for you, John. So yeah, have you had a chance to dig in and see some of the comments made on the existing document? Where are we at with that one?
Yes, I have. I haven't done, a detailed review of it. But as I'm beginning to put my plan together for the overall parking program recommendations that I hope to have to council probably early September, that will be included in it, but I will definitely bring that portion back to y'all first, so you'll know what my ideas are. Again, that will probably start mid-August on my timetable right now. I'm trying to get through July and early August, and then I'm trying to work on these bigger plans for everybody.
Well, good news, we're almost done July, so here comes mid-August. So I'll just offer yeah, we'll put it on the agenda for August to look at the RPP. If you get to a point where you want to get our feedback, so as a reminder, where we got to was we have the original document. There are some markups that exist. If you get to a point where you think it's useful to send it out to the board for us to comment or chime in on some of the markups, I think we're ready and willing to do that. We don't need to wait until the August meeting to do that. So if you get something and you want to send it to us, please do.
I will, and I do have those markups, and I think the overarching goal is that it just seems like it could be a much more simple process. And so that'll be my goal and recommendation.
Here. Simpler. Great. Yep, we're on the same page there. Great. Okay, thank you, James. I think that's it for our goals review, and also that should cover our presentations from the map board. So we don't have anything else under presentations. Now I'll race you. Staff presentations, sunshine laws and open records training. Hi. We've got some more guests here. Welcome.
You have to do the slideshow. Hello, everyone. I'm Elena Krebs, the city clerk, and we have Kristen Ducoy, the deputy city clerk. So tonight is the first session of her boards and commission training. As you all may know, the city clerk's office manages boards and commissions. So not only does that include the appointment and reappointment process, but it also includes training as well. The last couple of years, we haven't been able to offer that, but we're now in a good spot where we can focus time on this project. And Kristen has done a great job on creating a board and commission training session or program, I should say. So she'll actually be in attendance for a couple of your meetings to provide that training. And it's going to cover tonight some basic legal information to like effective meetings later down the road, and then eventually utilizing our civic clerk platform for running your meetings. So with that, this may be some information you already know, but she does a wonderful job at delivering it very engaging and interactive. So I hope you enjoy it.
Thanks, Elena. All right. Hello, everybody. And I'm excited that you guys get to be my first board. So I'm going to be talking about Colorado Sunshine Law first, which is under Title 24, Article 6, Sections 101 to 502. And it informs the methods by which public meetings are conducted. Essentially, this law is about public transparency. Does my button work? Nope. Elena, I'm going to need you to move slides, please. All right. So open meetings law generally says all meetings of 3 or more members of any local public body where any public business is discussed must be open to the public. So with that said, there are 2 criteria that we'd like to point out and also say that this is a focus on open meetings law, which falls under sunshine. So 2 criteria to look at there, 3 or more members, and also that that public business is being discussed. All right, next. So what is a local public body? The law says that it is a board, committee, commission, and I'll just jump to that last point where it says any public or private entity that has been delegated any governmental decision-making function. Excuse me. Next. All right, so what is a meeting? Does anybody want to try defining what a meeting is?
Can we go back? Can I ask a
Yeah,
question or do you
question?
hold questions till the end?
Yeah, go ahead and ask a question.
Because given that the map board is not quasi judicial, we have no budget.
Mhm.
We don't really make policy. We don't make rules. We make suggestions to council, we make suggestions to staff, and they do with it as they please. And so it's just curious, is there any difference between like us and the planning commission, right? Or other boards that have truly some sort of formal decision-making power and budget?
Yes, in the sense that they are quasi judicial and you are advisory, but in regards to open meetings law, it still applies.
So although there are differences, we are a public body and therefore subject to these regulations.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do you guys think that a meeting could happen over something like Facebook Messenger, for example?
Yes.
Yes. All right, what about over the phone?
Yes.
Yep, and email? Absolutely. Okay, so the statute broadly defines a meeting as any kind of gathering convened to discuss public business in person, by telephone, electronically, or by other means of communication. So it is a pretty broad definition there. So if it meets those 2 criteria that we talked about before, and you're gathering to communicate in any way, it would apply. All right, next. So we're going to go over 4 types of meetings: open meetings, meetings requiring notice, meetings requiring minutes, and executive sessions. And all 4 of these can happen within one meeting, but most of the time you're guys going to just see those first 3. All right, so to dive a little deeper into open meetings, this is a more specific definition. So meetings with, does anybody remember how many? 3 or more. Thank you. And or a quorum, whichever is less. Does anybody want to try to define a quorum?
I think it depends on the committee, but it's typically a majority of the voting members present. So we have 7 active members. We have 4 at this meeting, so we have quorum.
That's correct. You could also say that a quorum is the minimum number of members required to make a meeting valid. I wanted to note with that if, for example, your board was not fully appointed at 7 members, say, for example, you had 3 members, your quorum would then be 2, right? So if that happens, then with 2 being less than 3, 2 members discussing public business would trigger open meetings law in that case. All right, and then of course, the rest of it said that any public business discussed and formal action, which of course, if you take formal action, public business applies. All right, thank you. And then for publishing notice, a minimum of how much time can you tell me how much time before you have to publish your agenda?
24 hours.
Correct, yes. So minimum of 24 hours notice with as much specific information as possible. is required for meetings in which, in summary, that first bullet point says formal action occurs. And the second bullet point, which more likely is going to trigger that you need to put notice, says either you have a quorum in attendance or expected to be in attendance. So basically, meetings are intentional, so you want to give public notice for them. All right, so for meetings requiring minutes, the law says that they're required in which the adoption of any proposed policy, position, resolution, rule, regulation, or formal action occurs or could occur. So again, that just basically means formal action. Those would all generally fall under that. So if there's something on your agenda that implies that there could be action, like a decision or motion, then minutes should be taken for that meeting. All right, so we're going to dive into executive sessions a little bit. I'd like to start by saying that they are not a separate meeting, but they're going to be within a regular or special meeting. And they do have a formal process. So we recommend that you refer to staff if you expect that you might have an executive session, and they can refer to the clerk's office or city attorney if need be. But as far as that formal process goes, generally, these are some points on that there needs to be 2/3 quorum present, and that, let's see here. No action can occur during executive session, and the provision authorizing executive session and topic must be announced to the public. So it's very much a full process. With that said, if you don't enter executive session properly, there was a municipality in Colorado within the past couple of years that the court got involved with, and in that scenario, the judge decided that they did not enter executive session properly. Therefore, everything that occurred in executive session was still part of the public meeting, and they had to release the recording from that session. So very important to make sure that you refer to staff on those. You have a question?
Question, yeah. Okay, so first of all, it says affirmative vote of 2/3 of the quorum present could hold a closed session at a regular or a special meeting. So it doesn't have to be part of a regular meeting.
No, it doesn't. It could be part of a special meeting. Those are any meeting that you have where there would be action outside of your regular meetings.
And we couldn't, if this were to happen, and I'm struggling to imagine it happening for the map board, but just theoretically, we wouldn't be able to take action in the executive session.
No.
We could have a discussion in executive session, and then the decision-making would have to happen in an open session.
There are some specific scenarios where that might happen that I think I've seen before. If we go to the next slide, there's actually specific topics for executive session that you're only allowed to talk about specific things. That's why we might often.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you are correct. You can have a discussion in executive session, and then you need to go into a regular meeting, open meeting to make a decision.
To vote. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Elena. All right, so topics include property transactions, attorney conferences, negotiations, personnel matters, confidential matters under federal or state law. And that could be something like HIPAA, for example. I can't imagine that coming up for you guys, but that's one example. And then documents protected under CORA, which we'll get into more detail in a bit here.
Do you have a definition for negotiations?
I do not.
Sounds like that might be kind of loose.
I think it's more pertaining to like legal negotiations. For example, if you're negotiating purchase of a property.
Right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so we have some best practices, which essentially is just keep in mind to be transparent. It's best if you can save all of your discussion as much as possible for public meetings. Even if you are talking to just one other member about public business, it's good practice to keep that limited so that you're in the spirit of that law. And also it's good process, I will say, so that you're not repeating yourself. And then secondly, anything that you say to anybody else, even not on the board, like staff or applicants or board members, just be mindful when it's regards to public business that might come out with that. There is Cora for the next slide. We just have a quick note on that. Just to note that they are kind of connected in a sense. And your emails and text messages are core requestable as an appointed member on a advisory board for the city. So that's something to keep in mind in your emails regarding public business or funds. All right, so some emailing best practices. We do recommend blind carbon copy when emailing the board. That way, for those of you who are in the habit of reply all, which is generally considered good practice, that you are not replying to the whole board, because that will make it so that anybody who's blind carbon copied is not shown as a recipient. And then putting warnings on there if need be, that it's a one-way email, or to not reply, put it in bold, put it in red. We really want to just avoid that back and forth discussion that could potentially be triggered by emailing the entire board.
So I have a question about that.
Yes.
As a matter of practice for the last couple of years on this board, we haven't even, essentially, we don't have access. I cannot email the board, even if I put them in a blind copy. And I would like to change that. I would like it that board members can email the entire board as long as there's not an ongoing two-way discussion. So if I, as chair, want to send something to the board, is it all right that I can blind copy the entire board on that?
I would say it's not best practice, but I probably would refer to Elena to elaborate on this.
That would be fine in instances of where you're scheduling meetings, sharing information. A blind copy, yes. As long as there's no back and forth, no replies, then there's no issue with that.
Okay, so I'm going to propose that what we adopt on our board is, in instances like that, if somebody needs to communicate in that way, blind copy the board and always keep a staff member, probably James and John, on the primary recipients on those emails.
Mm-hmm. So that would be something that you want to put in your SOP then.
Yep, we should.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So can I throw in on that as well? So from your email being Cora, someone to submit a Cora request for your email,
It is discoverable.
it might be, for you personally, it might be better to continue to have James be the one to send it out, such that if a Cora request is sent, they pull his email versus delving into yours, for what it's worth.
So I guess that's a good question. Can the state or the city or somebody come and say, hey, we want to see all of your personal emails?
Do you get into this or?
Yeah, I can. So when we get a record request, and because you guys don't have city emails, and even with text messages as well, if they're requesting your correspondence, then we would reach out to you and request that you provide that correspondence. So it would be up to you to respond with that. With that said, if you do not provide anything or not provide what you have, there is the potential, if it gets brought to court, that be subpoenaed, right?
Yeah, so in that case, my entire personal email account could be subpoenaed.
Correct, yeah. All we can do is request, but if the requester comes back and argues that they know that there's additional information out there, they would have to go through a court process and get a subpoena.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you.
All right. Also, I don't have it up on this slide, but how many of you know what a daisy chain is? Yeah, I have a couple nods. So we want to make sure that we're not communicating in a indirect way that would trigger open meetings law, where it's communication from one person to the next, to the next, to the next, which could look something like person A reaching out to the person B and saying, I think we should vote yes on this item. Person B reaching out to person C and saying, I agree. And then C to D saying, FYI, this is what we're thinking. That would trigger open meetings law. So we want to make sure that we are, again, being transparent and keeping things in the meeting. All right, so we talked about some of this a bit already, but the law does say that email communications among elected officials, this would apply to you as appointed officials as well, that do not relate to the merits or substance of pending legislations or other public business are not considered to be a meeting. And then with that scheduling we mentioned, and forwarding information is okay. Again, just avoid that back and forth. We do recommend that something like this, you go through either your staff liaison or chair. And more likely, I'm going to imagine that it's related to packet material or information for upcoming meetings. But just maybe refrain from commentary. If you are sending information, just send the information.
And just to clarify, this applies to elected officials and appointed members like us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so we have a little knowledge check that Elena is going to pull up. Have you guys ever used menti.com? You have your phones with you. So this is just a little interactive quiz so that we can go over some scenarios and better understand open meetings law. All right. And then if you just want to give me a thumbs up when you're all ready. That's okay. Take your time. So you go to menti.com. Yeah, anybody can participate. It's anonymous who's answering. It's just for fun and learning.
Oops. Okay, and that number is.
And then so menti.com and then put in the code 18169334. Oh, we got an answer already. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and read the question for now for anybody who hasn't read it yet. Jane is having a party for the holidays and she has invited everyone on her board. Does her event fall under open meetings law? So remember those two criteria that we talked about in the beginning. Oh, hold on one second. You have to.
Rebecca, I just got in and I didn't read the whole book.
Oh, go ahead. All right, that's pretty good. It looks like we got 5 votes. Elena is going to go ahead and uncover the answer. So no, it does not apply to open meetings law. And that's because that public business is not intended to be discussed at a holiday party. All right, Tom is discussing public business with an alternate member on his board when another member approaches. Will the discussion trigger open meetings law? Everybody ready? It looks like, yeah. All right, the answer is yes. Your alternate member, even though not always a voting member, is still a member on your board and it still applies.
If they stop talking about it, then it doesn't.
Yes, you're correct. If they stopped conversation when the member approached, then you're good.
Thank you.
All right, what is considered an open meeting? We have a few scenarios here. 2 board members discussing public business while out at lunch. 2 board members, and you can select multiple answers. 2 board members discussing public business via emails that include the entire board. 3 board members discussing public funds at the office. 4 board members discussing availability for the next meeting. All right, so we have our answer here. It is the 2 scenarios in the middle there. The 4 board members discussing availability does not apply because remember, scheduling is not a topic of conversation that triggers open meetings law. All right, and then we just love to hear your feedback of what you learned today. We'll have the opportunity for additional questions in a moment.
Learned what Menti was.
It is a fun presentation tool for sure. That's a good point, yes. And I forgot to mention that sometimes you will see the city, I think in the past we have noticed holiday parties before just as a precaution. So you might see that like just a notice possible quorum at event, but they are not technically subject to open meetings law. All right. Does anybody else have anything to add? All right. Now we're gonna just get back into our slides here. So our final slide is let the sunshine in, be transparent, right? Who has questions?
Can we go back to the holiday party thing, or even, like, there's lots of instances of Kiwanis or women's club or whatever, where multiple members of whatever are present and conversation swings to, oh, I hate parking or traffic downtown. Is that considered public business? And do they have to walk away from those discussions?
Yes. So if they're talking about public business, then like, of course, if they're not on the board, they're free to talk about that. But unfortunately, you being on the board, if there are 3 or more of you there, then you guys need to either walk away or not participate in the conversation.
But again, I guess it's not 100% clear to me where the line is. Like, if
Mhm.
it's oh, we hate the congestion in downtown Manitou Springs and everybody's venting, is that considered public business? Or is it, if they're talking about the residential parking, like with map board, right? That would be more public business.
Yeah, so like the general complaint that you said, no. But residential parking program, of course, yes. Elena could probably elaborate.
I'd say a good rule of thumb would be if it's any sort of policy that's in the making or you know that's on an upcoming agenda, that you guys steer away from that conversation. It's ultimately up to the board members, the elected officials to govern yourselves when you're out and about, but that's the best practice. If it's something that's upcoming, then don't talk about it.
All right, any other questions before we talk about Cora?
There was the statement of a meeting where a decision is or could be made.
Mhm.
And normally that wouldn't happen at the women's club, right? If you're just talking about, but I definitely take the point. If there's a policy question that is upcoming or is on an agenda and it's clear you're getting into a policy development discussion, I think that's where you want to be really careful. But talking generally at a social thing about things that affect the residents of Manitou is okay as long as you're not getting into actual policy making. Or in our case, it would be recommendation making.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And then I will say that the piece that you remembered about where formal action occurs or could occur is pertaining to minutes in a meeting. But it is a good guideline to kind of think of when you're thinking about things in a general sense of transparency too. Yeah. All right, so we're going to move on to open records law and processes. Also under Title 24, Article 72, and starting with starting at Section 201. And then next slide. So Colorado Open Records Act, CORA, says all public records shall be open for inspection by any person at reasonable times. And we'll get into what that is as we go along. So we have a message here that says under CORA, all messages sent to or from this email account may be subject to public disclosure. How many of you have seen this message when emailing staff before? Yeah. All right. Yep. That's our disclosure message, essentially that our emails are CORA requestable. All right, so let's talk about what is a public record, and we're going to highlight some important parts here. First of all writings made, maintained, or kept by, and then we'll skip to any local government financed entity for use in the exercise functions required or authorized by law or administrative rule or involving the receipt or expenditure of public funds. Does anybody have any questions on what that means? No? Okay, this does include correspondence of elected officials and appointed members. We have some exceptions to that on the next slide. So one of those exceptions is work product. So work product is consists of deliberative materials assembled for officials, generally, or that is actually going to be prepared by or for officials. And that is going to be things like notes, memos, preliminary drafts, that sort of thing. And then our second point here is saying that any communication not for use in performance of public functions or involving public funds is not included. And then the third one is talking about communication from a constituent or communication clearly of a personal nature that is expected to be confidential and not publicly known. All right, so next slide, we have some records that are not included. I'll let you guys read these for yourself if you want. Most of these you will never come across. And then redacted information is the one that I'd like to highlight for you. First of all, we have personal identifiable information, which is going to include your personal home address, personal email address, personal phone number, if we have records with credit card numbers on it, things like that. And then correspondence not related to public business or public funds. So kind of seeing a theme here, right? All right. All right. Can anybody tell me who the custodian of records is? Yes, you're right, city clerk. And also, I will say that as deputy city clerk, I do fill in on the behalf of the city clerk as needed to handle CORA requests and other matters. So statute does say that the custodians or city clerk may make rules necessary for protection of records and prevention of interference with regular duties in the clerk's office is generally what that says. All right, so the city of Manitou Springs does have a public records policy. And the purpose of that is to ensure prompt and equitable service to citizens requesting access to public records. And our policy is to make all records available for public inspection unless such records are protected from disclosure by state or federal law, by court order, or unless disclosure of such records would be contrary to public interest. I will say that our full policy is available on the city clerk's webpage, if you want to check that out anytime. And I'll note that criminal justice records maintained by the Manitou Springs Police Department are separate and not included in this. With that said, you can request both their records or our records on the same form, which is available on the clerk's webpage. This is the form that we require to be submitted in writing, which you can do online or on paper if you want to come to our office. And this is just kind of let you guys know what the process looks like. We do need a certain amount of specificity so that we can find what the requester is looking for as well. And I'm just going to cover a couple points on this slide. First of all, the clerk's office will respond within 3 business days. That is what's determined to be a reasonable amount of time. And also that the research and retrieval fee is $41.37. That's an hourly rate after the first hour is free. So we have some highlights here for you if you wanted to review them later. All right. All right, and then as far as how Cora relates to boards and commissions, your emails and text messages, again, are requestable. And we recommend that you keep transparency in mind in your communications. And a good rule of thumb that we like to think of is if you don't want to see it printed in the newspaper, probably best not to write it and send it. All right, does anybody have any questions about Cora? No? John?
Probably not my place for this board, but in a prior city close to here where I worked, they would, if a core request came in for data or information, they would state that if it was not a report we normally ran, we weren't required to go out and try to create the data.
Yes, Cora does say that we do not have to create records to fulfill a request. So we would say it's a request for a document, right? So if that document doesn't exist, then we aren't going to necessarily create it. Now, there are times where we might have something stored in a system and it might take us 5 minutes for like pull a report. That would be a little bit different, but yeah, we're not generally creating records to respond to these requests.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Anybody else? All right, well, thank you for having us.
Great stuff. Thank you very much to you both for illuminating and well put together presentation.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's keep rolling into other staff presentations. We'll see if we can cruise through these. Here's our Pike Ride stuff. Go ahead. Thank you, James.
So we'll start with Pike Ride report. You'll notice we saw a big jump this month over our previous years in Pike Ride, which is good to see. And it just seems like we're getting good usage from a good majority of our Pike Ride stations throughout town.
James, anything in specific that points to that, you think?
I'm not necessarily. I would say this year has been fairly busy. We've seen an uptick in revenue, so that might go hand in hand with how much we're seeing with Pike Ride. It may just be that we've got more Pike Ride stations around the city and they're getting more exposure and people seeing them. Go ahead, Carl.
So I thought this was fantastic, right? The highest month ever for Pike Ride in the whole time we've had Pike Ride. It is interesting, the top stations, Shriver, Manitou Beckers, and Cannon Lovers Lane are all, like Shriver, we moved from the parking lot to the sidewalk. And I think that visibility to the bike share is really critical for people noticing and actually using it. So that's a speculation, but not substantiated. But I would think that definitely helped influence the increased ridership there.
Yeah, definitely just having it more visible all around town is boosting that, I think. But it's good to see that people are using those services that are available, so.
And one other thing, I think it's super cool that the library is getting ridership as well up there on top of Pawnee. So that's cool that people are, going to the library or that neighborhood and using that new station. Because there's been some concerns from certain folks before that, Pike Ride in neighborhoods wouldn't really be effective. So great that that's having some success.
And given that there's not a whole lot of parking around the library, I think it gives people a good alternative to get to the library as opposed to driving and parking a car there. Anything else on Pike Ride?
Just, it looks great. Thanks for this, James.
Yeah, of course. There we go. Mountain Metro, we've seen a pretty substantial uptick in ridership there as well, both for the 3 as well as the 33. And that's this month's report. Oh. There we go. And then, of course, our comparison charts here.
Great to see the 33 taking off.
And then we'll go ahead and move on to C-Click Fix report unless anybody has questions regarding Mountain Metro. C-Click Fix was pretty light this month. Only 8 requests were submitted during the month of June. 6 of those requests were our typical vehicle parking complaints, typically vehicles that either appear to be abandoned, they've been parked on the street, haven't moved in a while in a neighborhood, those types of things. We did have a couple of sign maintenance requests. One was to replace the missing bus stop sign at Old Man's Trail and Manitou Avenue there at the Duck Stop, which we coordinated with Mountain Metro to get that replaced. The other sign request was just some low signage that was at the corner of Capitol Hill and Ruxton Avenue. We received a complaint that folks were bumping into those signs because they were placed too low. So we did go through and raise those signs to a safe height to eliminate that risk. In addition to our 8 requests that were submitted in June, there were 4 work orders created and completed in June. And I've listed those 4 things here. So we did get a request to remove the excess rebar and the the parking wheel stops at Shriver Park, and that was completed mainly just to prevent damage to cars parking in that lot. The sidewalk, the damaged sidewalk in front of the Dillon Mobility Hub has been fully repaired. And then the missing bus stop signs listed there as well. And then the last one was just there was a utility line marker that nobody knew what it was. It's just a gas line that they marked in the Hiawatha lot, and they just kind of left the marker there. But no action taken on that right now, especially with the construction that's going to be going on in that lot. We felt it might be a good idea to keep that marker there for whatever work they're going to be doing there. But that's going to be it for the C-Click Fix report. Any questions?
Thank you, James. Okay, next up, we've got infrastructure updates. Don't have anything specific under that item. Are there specific infrastructure updates you guys wanted to share?
We're doing some geo testing was actually happening today in the Hiawatha lot. I don't know if anybody rode by there and saw it, but the big drilling rigs were out there, and that's just taking core samples in preparation for our recommendations for the Hiawatha lot and what we want to do there. And James, I don't think we had any other major infrastructure stuff that we're doing, so it's just working on Hiawatha.
Any chance, and I know this isn't on the agenda, but the Dillon, I noticed there's still work trucks there. I'm assuming that's still working on the restrooms in the parking office.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So we are still working. If you'll notice now, the windows are in, the storefront doors are in the office as well as the restroom facilities, and all the work in the restroom facilities. The sheetrock is up, the cement board is up, the sinks are in. So they're in a tiling phase right now. And once the tiling is done, it'll be the paint and the flooring will be put in, and it should be ready to open. I know that there's been a delay in some of the tile delivery, so we'll try to get you an update. We have a meeting. It's tomorrow, right? Thursday's my update meeting, so we'll have a better update and maybe can give you a little bit of a timeline. So of when the restrooms should open first, and then the office should be available at the end of August.
Thank you, John. I guess, okay, requested updates. We've got two here. So one is an update about the traffic calming board. What have you had a chance to learn about that board?
Let me pass around an update I got from my partner, Ben Smith, our Public Works Director and acting city engineer. So if you want to take one and pass it around. I also just did a little snippet copy of what is on the city's website that talks about the traffic calming request applications. I'm sorry, I could not format it any better, but if you just go to the city's website, you can see it on there. So this is what Ben was able to pull together because we had some requests for what's been submitted and what the updates are at this point in time. And so if you got any questions about that, let us know. I am working with Ben. We are, let me get back to his email to share with you.
And John, will you be able to make all of this part of the minutes for this meeting?
Sure.
And I'll make sure I upload all these documents and add them to the packet as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
I got them at 4:30 today from Ben.
Question, if I may, John. So as you may know, I was appointed the citizen appointee to that traffic calming board. And so looking at this list, I know that there was also a request for Crystal Hills Boulevard that I'm not seeing on here. And I believe that what preceded, I think that was 2023.
That may have been, this is what Ben was able to pull from the records that he had access to.
Okay.
So if you think there's something out there that we may not be aware of, and some things may have come through, just somebody emails and said, can you look at XYZ Street or something? So, but not through the formal, what was the traffic calming process.
There was definitely Crystal Hills Boulevard, I believe, was the first, and it was reviewed at the board. And yeah, so it went through the process. So.
But you said you thought it was 23?
It was before the Chris Park Road one on here. If these are in time order, it would have preceded that one.
Maybe in the interest of time, what I could ask is, since, we kind of got this late and John just got it this afternoon, maybe we can take a look at this and review and bring some comments back. I think the really most important point that we want to get clarity on is, what's the status of the board? Is it going to be meeting? Is it continuing? What is the, timeframe for, it sounds like it's still working, but there's not a lot of visibility. And so what's our ability to get some more clarity on the process?
So Ben and I are going to take the lead on getting this back up and functioning. And when we look back at it, and again, I apologize, I got this information late. The original board consisted of the city engineer, the public works supervisor, parking manager, finance director, and a member of the map board. Okay. And Ben and I are thinking that we're not sure why the finance director was on that particular board, so we'll probably recommend that we don't need them. If we decide we want to take action, we can look at our budgets. We do think that the public works supervisor, which is Eric Carlson, should be involved in it. And we wanted your direction for how you wanted the map board involved. We didn't know, we were kind of thinking that we would review these as they come through the process, and then make our recommendations back to you. But do you want to be involved more upfront in these items? What's kind of your wish on that as we kind of put the structure back together so it's workable?
My instinct is, let's get the band back together and get the thing rolling and sort of see. So I think in the first instance, maybe to continue to have a map representative if that board is actually meeting. But if it's not, and it's just a series of staff emails to react to requests, then perhaps just an update from that board, from that discussion to the board might be appropriate. And Carl, since you're the most knowledgeable, I'd like to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, and not speaking for the board, speaking for myself, I don't think, well, it's up for board discussion, obviously, but my view is we shouldn't add more process to this. And because my biggest, I don't know, not issue, but concern with this, and what I hear from residents and folks that have submitted these requests, is that they haven't had good feedback from the city on what's going on. And it kind of feels like, hey, I went through all this work collecting signatures and submitting stuff, and it kind of feels like it went off into the ether and nothing happens, or, they feel like their voices isn't being heard. And I know that, there's things like Hero showing that we did stuff, right? So that maybe it's just a communication issue. So, trying to address the communication issue, I think is number one thing from my perspective. And I don't know that having the map board involved would speed things up at all. But that's just my personal opinion.
Just making a note of your comment. I share with Ben.
Though, I mean, I think potentially it might be interesting to see, like, this report is very useful, right? To see what requests are submitted and the status, so something that we review on some, I don't want to put more work on staff, but, like on a quarterly basis or whatever, just to show, hey, that we're addressing things to the broader board might be useful.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Any other direction on that then? I'm glad to hear you guys are looking at it. I'll just say, I tend to agree. I don't see why you'd need the finance director as part of that, but I think what we'd like to see is your recommendations about how we make this a, fully functioning and not overly bureaucratic process.
No, I understand. And that's what Ben and I are going to work on. But again, it's been a heavy ramp up for he and I both, and new people and trying to find these things. And it's a challenge, but we're ready to do it.
Certainly acknowledge that. Yeah.
So I would throw something out there, and this is more probably a future agenda item. But I would also like to see, so the traffic calming board, or I forget the official title, is great and it's a good starting point. But the focus is, at least from my experience so far, is more, stop signs, speed bumps, paint road diet kind of thing, which is great and it's a good starting point and show that we can see some sort of improvement. But in certain cases, it feels like there needs to be a path beyond that to make broader changes. And so trying to define what that might be and how that can get included in discussions and budgets, I think might be useful for citizens, right? Because if, hey, we put a speed bump on a road and people still speed up and down the road and it doesn't really make any improvement, begs the question of what's next, right? And if that's all that's in the toolkit for the traffic calming board, there needs to be the next level or a next option for them.
Carl, how would you feel about, having John and Ben give us their sort of assessment and recommendations, and then we can, maybe kind of look for ways to improve the process once they're on top of it?
Yeah. The near term is we need to get the new team together and get going again. And I totally recognize that and respect that that's going to take time. So I was just trying to throw a stretch goal out there for beyond that.
Okay, great. I do kind of want to keep us moving on here. So, I think.
Okay, yeah, there's some items listed in what I sent out to you that's included in the current recommendations, certain toolkit items, but you're talking about, what do we do next if these aren't working?
Thanks, John. And yeah, the other item that we did ask for an update on is the safe biking designation, potentially on El Paso Boulevard. And the reason that I brought that up is we've seen some improvements from the Colorado Springs side on Pikes Peak Avenue, both at, was it 31st and 30th? So Colorado Springs is investing in a bike route, a safe bike route into Manitou. And they're waiting for us to say, where do you go once you get there? And so wondering what the outlook is for potentially making improvements on El Paso Boulevard. And again, don't expect that you can snap your fingers and make that change. But is that something that we're interested in? And should we start making plans and maybe making budget requests for pilots or things like that for coming up for the next year?
Can you educate me a little bit more on what that would look like from your point of view? Because it's not an area that I'm necessarily an expert on.
Yeah. And actually, what I maybe would love to do is go look at it in person with you and to talk through it. But essentially, Pikes Peak Boulevard in Colorado Springs, as it comes west, is becoming more and more bike friendly. To me, it's a really obvious place where we could say this is a safe bike way to get into Manitou. There are some there are some limited bike facilities on El Paso as Pikes Peak changes into El Paso as it gets into Manitou. And from a mobility perspective, it would be great if we could advertise this is the safe way to ride your bike from Colorado Springs into Manitou. So that's the goal. Some of us have thought that El Paso is the right place for that. We don't want to make drastic changes all at once. Should we be looking at pilots? What kind of infrastructure changes might be needed in order to make that a designated safe bike route? That's my view of it. Any other comments on that one, Carl?
Yeah, I had a tiny bit of involvement, the discussion with the former Colorado Springs bike planner and Roy Cheney. I got pulled into a discussion where the Colorado Springs bike planner reached out and said, hey, we're doing the Colorado Springs bike map. And, we'd be willing to add Manitou's routes to that map. And Roy was asking for input and we talked about it. And the sticking point was, at least in that particular scenario, was, hey, we could designate El Paso Boulevard as a bike route, which would be great, add it to the map. The challenge was, that can get you into downtown. You can take Lover's Lane, you can take Park, and you can get to, the roundabout, Tubby's turnaround, not roundabout, but there's no way to come back safely, right? And so like if you have, kids or beginners, what's the loop? And so at that time, the decision was not to add Manitou to that bike map. because there wasn't a designated bike route. And
And
obviously
specifically because Park
is
Boulevard-
one way.
Park
Yeah,
is a
yeah,
one way.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. Park is a one way and it's illegal to ride bikes on the sidewalk. So, like coming, I'll ride downhill on Manitou Avenue through town because you can go to the speed of traffic, but not everybody's comfortable with that, with cars parking and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And so, yeah, having El Paso Boulevard as a designated bike route would be good. And I think even the step beyond that is even like if you're a pedestrian, what's the way to come into town? Like the Midland Trail or not, the Creek Walk Trail ends at the Chamber and the locals know you can go past Briarhurst or you can go up to El Paso and cut across the creek. But stuff I don't know is super well defined on all the maps of where like the Creek Walk Trail connects into town, right? And so formalizing that, I think on maps would be very useful.
Maybe what I'd like to propose is, John, I'll work with you to set up a little bike tour. We could maybe take some bike rides and we can tour around and look at some of this stuff. And I'm thinking, given our recent presentation about sunshine laws, maybe if we can find a date that works for us, maybe we publish that as a public meeting and allow others to join us also. Or we could do it either way, keep it as we keep it as a one-on-one, or we could make it a public meeting. I'd be happy to just meet with you one-on-one and show you what we're talking about, if that would help.
That would be fine, as long as I can, navigate the particular bicycle mechanism that we choose to use.
Yep, I promise to support that. Okay, well, I think that's some good action for now on that one. So I think unless there are other project updates or presentations, I think we can move into the business of the Bill Bowers Park recommendation. And I can hand this out. Still got Bill online?
Yeah, I'm here.
So James, if you could bring up the draft for Bill to see. So essentially, what I'm proposing here is that we make a resolution recommending to council that we do proceed, that we endorse the development of a multi-use trail in the Bill Bowers open space property that's owned by Manitou Springs, and to encourage city council to move ahead, as it says here, with all due haste, to determine how we can find the resources to plan and construct this connection. Based on Jillian's presentation, I would like to suggest a couple of changes to the draft that I had sent. There it is. Bill, can you see that?
I can't. Well, yes, I can read it. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So the
Can you hear
changes.
me?
Yep, we got you. Thank you, Bill.
Okay.
So the changes I'd like to make is in the first line where it says the Bill Bowers Park open space, it should be just the Bill Bowers open space. So strike the word park. And the second whereas, where it talks about the let's see, so
Master plan.
envisions a multi-use connection in this corridor. I'd like to strike the part that says as part of the regional Ring of Manitou network. Jillian wasn't sure that was the case, and I'm also not positive. I don't think it's really necessary. So yeah, end with multi-use connection in this corridor, James. So that was a resolution that I'm hoping we could consider. And essentially, this just makes it clear that the map board recognizes the value of this and would recommend to council that we consider the potential mobility enhancements of having a trail through that property. So I think I'm allowed to make that motion. I'm the chair and I'm making that motion. And I wonder if there is a second and we might be able to have a discussion about it.
Second.
Thank you, Bill. So now it's time for discussion. Are there any concerns or questions or other modifications that the board might like to see before we could make an endorsement like this to council? Carl?
I don't know that necessarily it needs to be modified, but I just want to point out that, so I'm a big supporter of adding connectivity in Manitou Springs for people outside of cars. And I think this would be a really awesome addition. And, the ability to get up to kind of the Bevers, the back door into Red Rocks Park for Manitou citizens and not having to drive up there all the time. So for people that don't have a car, they're young, whatever, choose to not use a car. I think this is a fantastic addition. And, would not have a negative impact on the neighborhood. So thank you.
Pam, do you have any comment about it?
I would agree. Yeah. That area is not really safe to try to walk on that street area there. So yeah, I'm all for it.
Okay, and Bill, do you have any other comment?
No.
Okay, I think we're ready to take a vote then. So all in favor of adopting the resolution as shown on the screen, please indicate by saying aye.
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 And the chair votes aye, so that passes unanimously. So we will forward this recommendation on to council. Thank you very much for that. Now do we get out of school early? Next
Sure.
item is board correspondence. Would anyone on the board like to share some observations or correspondence or recommendations for future agenda items? Last call. Hearing none. We are adjourned at 6:33. New record.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
board.
you.